This is a podcast for nice guys. How do you want to be remembered? Someone who sacrificed everything, or a man who got what he wanted while positively influencing others along the way? Join us to learn how to lead from the bedroom to the boardroom from the only international coach for nice guys, your host, Ashley Cox.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a podcast for nice guys. Today, I have Shari James, RN. She is a master healer, teacher, and coach specializing in men's sexual health. Shari has empowered thousands of men with her doctor-approved holistic approach, which aims to keep the power in men's hands, taking it away from big pharma. As a former stripper turned RN to holistic sex coach, known for a quote-unquote pill-free approach to healing ED, Shari James has been helping men keep it up since 1992. The emphasis of Shari's work is to help men get hard, stay hard, and last long. Shari has been featured on ABC News, Playboy, and the Good Men Project. In addition to being an expert guest on top podcasts, she has been a guest speaker at one of Forbes' top 3 must-attend events, Secret Knock, which is the #1 networking event in the world. Shari's mission is to raise the consciousness of men through the doorway of their sexuality. Thank you so much for being here, Shari. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. I already have goosebumps.
Me too, because you're amazing. Okay, let's dive in. What would you like to say to nice guys?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to start with the formula that I work with, which is a balance of being open-hearted, having a strong spine, and a firm lingam. So I don't know if everyone in your audience knows that word, but if they have kids in the car or something like that, a hard cock-a-doodle-doo.
What do you mean by an open heart, a strong mind, and a firm lingam? Can you break each one of those down for the listeners so they understand what that looks like in real time or in real life?
Yeah, so we can start with the open heart. I mean, really that's coming from your heart, listening with your heart, and speaking from your heart. So not speaking from your mind or your ego, and being able to share your heart. So really, truly being able to love a woman. And then the strong backbone is having a strong spine, because women need something to bump up against. We will unconsciously, and this is not conscious at all, we will test your boundaries. So what we'll do is we're going to push and push and push. And when we find that edge, it's like, yes. We love the edge. And I think firm lingam should speak for itself, right? Being able to penetrate a woman and create that arc of electricity of that positive and negative charge. And I always say it's not about size, it's simply about firmness. So I think we can take any one of those things and, go deeper into it.
Something that I often say is that someone who's operating in the nice guy archetype is sort of energetically flaccid. Do you agree?
I hate to agree, but I will. Yes, I will.
Because it reminds me of the strong spine thing, right? So I think these things go hand in hand, the firm lingam, the strong spine, the open heart, which allows the energy to literally, the energy, the life force, the blood, whatever, it allows for all of it to flow, right? So things can get firm. Women are like pushing around to see where a man's boundaries are, in the same way that she's searching for the firmness, right? Sexually.
Absolutely. They absolutely go hand in hand. Yeah. So I would say nice guys, typically they need more backbone, whereas the opposite need more heart, right? So we're always striving for balance in some way. Like when I'm working with someone with erectile dysfunction, their lingam isn't broken. There's just imbalances in their body going on. That's all. So this is the same thing. It's like, what does it look like to be a balanced man? And certainly I don't think the opposite type man would have shame that he doesn't have an open heart necessarily. So if we can just take shame out of this conversation, just throw it out the window. Bad boys need to soften and the good guys need to firm. Like that's how I see, like, right? Because we're helping men become in balance. so that they can be better men in every area for their life.
How do you get men who fall on the more passive side of the spectrum because they don't want to be a quote unquote bad boy? They don't want to hurt women. How do you get that person to step into and to embrace their life force, their firmness? How do you encourage them and teach them to be assertive?
I would say the first thing to know is that women want that. Women want men to be in leadership of them in some areas of their life. And I've learned that leadership can be a trigger word for people too. So I don't even know what to say anymore these days, but I'm going to use the word directive. So women are looking for men who are directive. And with my work that reflects in the bedroom, it's like how a man is showing up in the bedroom is typically how he's showing up in life, or how he's overcompensating in life in some way. So women want you to be directive. We want you to be sovereign, directive. And it's when we don't get that, I would say that we don't trust you, and we get frustrated, and we can get often exhausted or exacerbated.
Why does that affect women's ability to trust men?
Because it's like trying to hit a moving target, right? There's some level of instability there, and we don't know if it's mental instability, or you don't always know where the instability is coming from. I'm sure that's the work you help your guys with. But to have that strong spine, I just think of like a steel rod of like, oh, like I trust that. I trust that stability. I trust that edge, because that edge is telling me that you have a measure of self-respect and self-care.
So some men listening would say, I'm stable because I have a 9 to 5. I make good money. I take out the trash and do the dishes religiously. I'm doing everything I can. So what do you mean by stability versus instability? Because they may think that they're providing it already.
Paying the bills doesn't always have anything to do with your heart and your presence. That's a function that your family could have taught you to do. Sometimes nice guys can be the ones that are self-sacrificing, but then they're sneaking around and cheating behind the woman's back. So I mean, like a firmness. I can trust a firmness. It's not about I pay the bills on time. It's more about the man himself, not necessarily his actions.
That's huge for my listeners to hear, because a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm going to check all these boxes and then she'll like me, she'll love me if I just do X, Y, and Z. And what you're saying is there has to be an internal sense of self. And so people pleasing is less tempting, because if he's people pleasing, then there's an inconsistency because his answers change depending on how the person is going to perceive him when he gives the answer. Right? If he wants validation, approval, acceptance, respect, or love, and then he shifts his identity or his actions based on someone else's perception of him, then there's a lack of self. There's a lack of consistency. And to your point, there can even be huge breaches of self-respect and a lack of self-care because he's running around sort of putting everyone else first and not taking care of himself. So then they'll love him.
In modern sitcoms, there's a lot of yes, dear. And that couldn't be more unattractive. Like, I don't know who's writing those shows. What's going to turn a woman on, which I think is important for men to hear, is no. If you say no to me, I'm going to trust you a lot more than if you say yes to me every day. And it's going to turn me on. Like, just thinking about that just now, like I felt my body instantly light up of like, oof, I love it when the guy says no. It's hot.
Why does it make you trust a man more if he can say no to you, or if he does?
It's authentic. Yeah, if it's a yes, dear situation, first of all, it's going to become boring. No one always wants to get their way, right? Would you watch like a TV series where the character always got their way? Like, that's not even the human condition. It's sweeter when you have to like, oh, how do I get this?
I think for me, it also speaks to the fact that if he can say no to me, he can say no to the world and then protect our tribe or our what we've built. Or if I know that he can say no to me, then I know that he has the ability to say no, for example, to someone who maybe is trying to scam him or take advantage of him or take up his time, space, and energy in a way that's not healthy, right? So that to me, it's his ability to say no signals to me that he can say no to the world and therefore sort of protect and provide.
Yeah. He can't get my back unless he has a backbone. So that plays into what you're saying.
What else would you like to say to nice guys?
Get in touch with your anger. I think that helps develop a backbone. A lot of guys suppress their anger. So I like to say that it's like holding a beach ball underwater, and eventually you're going to get exhausted or you're going to erupt. Anger is a signal that perhaps you're being pushed too far, depending on the circumstance.
Do you think it could manifest in health issues if they never address it?
100% yes. Absolutely.
What kinds of health issues do you usually see associated with anger?
Well, that would naturally be associated with liver and anything liver bound or around the solar plexus. So the liver is then going to play into gallbladder and kidneys. And then the liver filters the blood, so it can show up as erectile dysfunction as well.
Do you think they sometimes suppress the anger because they don't want to be a bad man and hurt people and be abusive?
Absolutely.
So what does a healthy version of a man embracing his anger look like then?
I think there's ways a man can get his anger out, working with a coach, going to groups with other men, doing it through physical exercise, doing somatic release therapies, journaling. So basically any way, because right, so if emotions are energy in motion and all that is trapped and built, like you have to move that out of your system. Or yes, it will cause health problems, because health problems, in my view, start on the energetic level, not on the physical level.
And the work you do with men is incredible, and you're helping them move the energy and shift their emotions so they can have a physical manifestation that they desire, which is, to be hard, because these emotional and energetic hangups or things that are backlogged or being repressed are getting in the way of their firmness. It's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I use breath work with them, and then also energy work. So I wrote this note, and maybe this is, I think this is something good guys might not know. So I wrote, if all else fails, do respect sex. But I want to say more about that. And I can even tell a little bit of a story about that. So I have a very good friend, and I've known him for probably 25 years. His girlfriend is the breadwinner between the two. She's the one with the great credit score, the stable income, the 6 figures, all that stuff, right? The more serious job. He's not that. He's the opposite of that. And he's wonderful in his own way. And when she really starts like emasculating him, and I'm like, you know what you have to do? And I got to try to say this cleanly. You have to F the crap out of her. Like, you have to ravage her. You have to penetrate her. You have to exhaust her. You have to throw her around the room. And every now and then when he comes to me and I'm like, you know what you have to do? You got to And afterwards, the next day he always calls. He's like, oh my God, she's purring like a kitten. She's like a completely different human being. Right. So that's why I wrote, if all else fails, then because in a lot of ways, the female perspective comes down to respect. Do we respect the man we're with? And in my opinion, it's okay if a man doesn't make as much money and things like that. I don't know if women care as much about that these days. Some do, some don't. But there's one way in which you can earn respect, which you may have not thought about. And this is, I think, something that bad boys know about, that nice guys probably do not.
What if they're dealing with a woman who is kind of on edge and sensitive and catty and bratty? Does this rule still apply for them?
Even more so. Even more so. She needs a good spanking. Yeah. And you need to be the one to do it. Absolutely.
What does that process look like? Because there is a process, right? And so what is he saying? What is he doing? How is he feeling in his body?
It's getting in touch with your instinctual self, right? There's an instinct to penetrate and ravage a woman. So I think we just talked about releasing anger, right? So anger to me is a big part of that instinctual erotic cauldron that can be accessed. If you're in nice guy mode all the time, you're probably not going to be having respect sex.
Do you have any phrases that come to mind that he can say? Let's say she gets home from work and she's like, oh, you didn't do the dishes again. Oh my gosh, I've been working all day and that's the least you could have done. There was something that you said earlier that was indicative of these guys creating a dynamic in their relationship where she's out of control, just looking for the backbone.
Say something that's going to be directive in your circumstance. I'm trying to think for my own life if I can pick. Yeah, okay. I just remember, not that I was like acting up or anything. My best relationship ever was with a man where we're very fluid with our roles. Like sometimes I'd be really assertive, sometimes he would. It was the best relationship I ever had because we could play both like polarities and dynamics. But I'm just, for some reason, what's popping into my head is we pull in the driveway from going out for dinner. And he's like, I got to make a call. I'm staying in here. I want you to go take your clothes off and wait for me on the couch. And I was like, okay. Just things that are more directive. I mean, he had the goods to follow that up. So anytime you're directive,
she knows what to expect. You're being 100% clear.
Yes. And your state of being is one of, like I was saying, like open heart, strong spine, firm lingam, presence. It's the way that I work is more always going to be from the inside out. So it's state of being first, not words. Like the words come from the state of being.
Right, exactly. That's such an important thing for my listeners to hear, that we're not talking about checking boxes, because that's what you've been doing and that hasn't been working. The piece that a lot of, not just nice guys, but a lot of men in general really miss is that women feel them. Right. Energetically, emotionally. And so they're lost because they're like, I'm doing all the things. I don't get it. And it's because she feels you, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. You can say the words, but if the energy is not there behind them, then we know that they're not true words.
We can feel the misalignment between their subconscious and their conscious mind. So what they're saying or doing consciously, and then what's really going on for them subconsciously, which could be some little boy material inside, some mommy things, some insecurity things, not taking care of themselves, what have you.
Yeah. And guys, I mean, try this for yourself. You don't have to go from 0 to 100. It doesn't have to be like, get in the house and I'm going to rip your clothes off. And then you're going to do the dishes, not me. Like, you don't have to go extreme. I always say, always experiment with things that you hear on podcasts, right? Like, don't take it verbatim, but so just experiment with one tiny little thing. Just be directive and then look at how she reacts to that. I can speak for most women I know, which are more in the alpha side. We want a guy who's directive. You can be a nice guy and be directive. You can be a more quote unquote alpha, or bad boy and be directive. So just taking each opportunity to be as directive as possible.
So I want to circle back to the open heart thing. When you say open heart, what comes to mind for me is when nice guys shut down because she's having an emotional experience and they retreat or fawn and give her what she wants, etc. Is that related to the open heart concept at all?
I would relate that actually more to the backbone caving in. Like women can use emotions in a manipulative way. And if you're constantly caving in, right? Like what's your body language? My backbone just shifted just by caving in, right? To her versus standing up straight. It's like breathing into the heart, open heart, strong spine. Do your worst, but you're not going to get that. I was watching a show. What's it called? It's the one that takes, oh God, this was so good. It takes place in Montana, Yellowstone. Do you watch Yellowstone?
I do. I love it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the main woman, I can't think of her name right now.
Beth.
Okay, Beth. Okay, she's a nice guy's worst nightmare, right? Like, look at her husband as kind of this strong, silent type. They were having an argument recently, and he was like super calm, like didn't get heated. You could tell he was getting frustrated, but kept calm. And he goes, put the crazy aside. Like he was just boom, boom. And I was like, yes, like that was good writing, right? He was directive and strong. He wasn't reactive. And she was a great actress because I then watched for her reaction and she was like kind of bewildered for a second when he did that. It was so authentic. And then she did answer him. He stopped her in her tracks. It was such a beautiful, simple scene.
They are a really good example of a polarized relationship, and that she's sort of, you would think that she's masculine, but I think she's actually very like feminine in the fact that she's like a force of nature, right? And she can create or destroy, and she knows it, and she's just all over the place and very, very smart, you know. We think of feminine as soft and light pink and all these things, but there's also this dark side to the feminine, which nice guys typically sort of pull out from a woman, you know, because it's like his lack of consistency and stability will pull out all of her fear, which is that dark side when it comes, she's running in survival mode. And it's like every man for himself. If you're not going to take charge, I will.
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't know what to do with it. But what's really funny is they love it sometimes because they have the best sex with those types of women. So that's why they're sometimes attracted to these intense women who have this big dark side and who are creative, both creative and destructive, and these like forces of nature. They eat up the energy sometimes. So I think there's a way, to your point, to direct the energy in a way where it's not destructive to the relationship. Mm-hmm. And he can show her that he can contain it and not react. And he can instead feel his feelings, but not react to them. He can respond. And then that energy that she has that he kind of secretly loves sexually, that can be channeled and used in different ways if she knows that he's not available to be the target of it.
Well, I think it's a known thing that crazy people are good in bed, right? But I like to say, be good crazy, not crazy crazy. You'll have a much better experience.
Totally, totally. What do you mean by open heart? Like, what does that look like in real time?
Ooh, that's a feeling. I'm trying to think. It's easier if I just use examples from my own life. After the hurricane here in Florida, there was a young man who was cutting the trees in the back. And when I asked him if he could cut some up for firewood so I could have some firewood out of the deal, we started talking and I immediately felt his heart. It was an immediate feeling. I mean, when you're standing in front of someone, it's a feeling. I could feel that this young guy had a very open heart. And then he was telling me, oh, this crazy neighbor came out in the back and was flailing her arms and yelling about something at me. And I put her in her place. So when I was younger, I would take that kind of thing, but I don't anymore. I got like kind of turned on and I'm like, ooh, this guy's got an open heart, strong backbone. I'm like, ooh, this is the formula. So I think for me, it's a feeling. I mean, if someone's heart is shut down, it's probably because they're holding on to a lot of like past trauma or damage. It's like you can't feel them.
Do you think men shut down their heart as women turn up the heat and the toxicity? A man shuts down more and more, let's say in a long-term relationship, and then it just creates this vicious cycle?
Well, yes, because his nervous system will naturally contract to protect him. So it's a natural protective mechanism. And also to go along with that, your erection is going to short circuit when you're in that situation. A lot of the assessments I do a really deep dive on the assessments. If they are in any kind of volatile relationship, it's not that they have ED, it's that their body is protecting them from this woman.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big one. So a lot of the assessments I do will come to find out that a lot of them, I'm like, oh, you're normal. You're actually having a normal, healthy response to toxicity. This is a good thing.
So if a man is in that situation, what's the first thing that I think a lot of times they kind of go into victim mode and she's crazy. I don't want to leave because we have kids. What would be the first couple of things that they might do if they find themselves in this situation where they're shut down and she's quote unquote toxic, crazy, narcissistic, what have you? How do you break out of that? How do you hack it?
Well, the truth is, in that situation, both people are damaged. It's never she's crazy, it's she's damaged, and so are you. Looking at yourself and looking at your own self-esteem, your own childhood wounding, because what's making you be with someone who's damaged? You're damaged too. So for me, it's always taking self-responsibility. Years ago, I went out with someone that I would say was on the narcissistic side. And at that time, I did a lot of research and I came up with this inverted narcissism. And I read the definition and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. And it was illuminating. And then I started working on myself. And then that relationship just kind of naturally broke apart on its own.
Is inverted narcissism the same thing as codependency?
It all stems from the same issue. There's some unmet needs in there. There's some stunted emotional growth that's happening from childhood. For me, if I could boil it down to a phrase, it would be low self-worth. Right? So like in my situation, the person was like extracting my love and energy and support. And at that time, he was becoming much more successful. And I was like drained and half dead. But then I'm riding his coattails at the same time. And so that's like uplifting me. And I'm deriving my self-worth from being with him. So as someone in Hollywood when I'm living in LA. So I think both people are coming from low self-worth at the deepest level.
What were some signs and symptoms of your inverted narcissism? Were there any other signs other than what you just described?
Oh my God. I mean, we're talking probably 20 years ago. So it's hard to remember. I mean, there's kind of that basic thing where if you're pointing the finger at someone else and you're labeling them, whatever you just labeled them with, go ahead and go boop right back at yourself. So it could be selfish, it could be controlling. I mean, whatever the case might be, if you're at the point where you're calling someone a name or labeling them, shift it right back.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's been my experience too. And I started practicing that many years ago, where if that thought came to my mind about a person, I forced myself to sit down and go, well, how am I being selfish? How am I only thinking about myself? How am I being manipulative, covertly or overtly, whether or not I want to admit it, right? How am I sort of letting my childhood trauma run the show and create this dynamic? I can analyze them all day long and know what their childhood trauma is and why they are the way they are, but that doesn't help me. What helps me is to look at my own childhood trauma and how what I'm displaying is a coping mechanism and a pattern that I learned. And to your point, you said this inverted narcissism, this codependency goes back to low self-esteem. I would add potentially insecurity, shame, guilt, etc. And it's not like we sit down with boys, especially, and go, oh, here's how we don't really initiate them into manhood, and we don't let them talk about their feelings. We don't make it socially acceptable. We say, only girls cry. And so we gaslight boys their whole life, and we don't give them resources to process their feelings, process their emotions. We don't give them words for it, etc. They don't really have good examples. And so I want the men who are listening to understand that there is nothing wrong with you. We are literally, as we're recording this podcast, as the world turns, we are creating a new paradigm for men that hasn't existed at a mass level ever, right? So of course, men are struggling because we haven't taught them everything that we're talking about here in this podcast. Of course, they might have low self-esteem. Of course, they might have some insecurities, or they may be overly emotional or have some anger and not know what to do with it, etc., because we haven't been teaching this material, which is why as a man, it's your responsibility to learn it. It's your responsibility to seek it out and start somewhere, right? And know that when you're doing that, you are in fact being a leader, because we're creating a new paradigm as we speak.
Absolutely. Yes, we are. It's time. So do you want to jump into frustrated love? Frustrated love. So I wrote this note because I think it's important for guys to hear this. And I think it relates really well to me and Ashley is, she's been expertly coaching men for as long as she has. And I have been for a very, very long time. I'm like ancient. And lately I've been seeing Ashley's content get more assertive. And I'm like, it's frustrated love. I know where she's at in this process. And I feel that too. Like when you're breaking new ground with men and we're asking them to get coaching for themselves, like not for their business, not for their bodies, but for their inner selves, sometimes it's like pulling teeth, and you can see that you can help this person so much, and something's standing in their way of getting the help, and it physically hurts me. Because I instantly feel frustrated, and like my heart will actually hurt. Like if I'll get on a call with someone who doesn't want to move forward, and I'm like, oh my God, I just see that person's path, and I know that I could influence this greatly. And yet I see women, it's like they'll spend money on Botox and fillers, and I'm guilty of this, and we're sticking needles in our face and getting hacked up to pieces, right? To stay attractive and viable for men. And I think it's so frustrating as a woman, because when a man isn't showing up for himself, to me, it physically hurts me. And I've been seeing in your posts lately I'm feeling in your posts lately, a frustrated love coming from you, because you and I love men. We love them. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps and like a little emotional. We love them and we want the best for them. And so you have to imagine the women that they're with, like they're experiencing the same frustrated love, but they're experiencing it every day, right? You and I might only be experiencing it on assessments or discovery calls or something like that. So do you have anything to say about that? I'll throw the ball in your court now. It's just a note that I wanted to put because I felt it was relevant.
Yeah. So I have across social media, I've had about 10 million views and 80,000 followers across TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And I get messages daily, probably 100 messages a week, maybe more, of men complaining. And it just breaks my heart. Like there is a collective crisis. It's a silent crisis. And I am screaming from the mountaintops. There is help available, and it's not out there. Get outside, get some sun, right? Have a good cry. It doesn't have to be this thing that's so out of reach. That's a story that they're telling themselves. You're hurting. I see you. And the solution is actually much more simple than you even realize. And your brain is telling you some story that it's complicated. And honestly, it can be as simple as you just surrendering and admitting that you're not okay right now, admitting mostly to yourself that you're not okay, and letting it be okay that you're not okay, because there's so much shame and guilt around that. That's the hang up. And the frustrating part is that it's a mindset. It's a story. It's not real. And it's very difficult to convince someone otherwise when that's the place that they're at, when they're just steeped in their sort of victim mentality. And maybe the thing they need to do to sort of get up and go again is go for a walk or have a good cry. But we've made one men admitting that they're not okay wrong.
In your opinion, dealing with all these messages and this and that, could we boil it down to some degree on the not being willing to feel pain, to blame it on someone else, to run to porn, to run to the bottle, whatever the case might be? So can you want to say more about that?
Yeah, I've had several men tell me they'd rather go to war than talk about their feelings.
I'm going to agree with you. So I worked with someone who was a fighter pilot who flew in a war. So that's life and death. But when it came to women and opening his heart to love, no way. And I'm like, so you flew in a war, you were a fighter, you went out to kill or be killed. Because love is essentially, in order for your heart to truly open, your ego has to die. So it really is kill or be killed. So I think there's something around this about not being willing to feel pain.
I just had a really big realization from what you said. And one is the modern feminism is wonderful in theory, and the first couple waves were very crucial. Modern feminism, much of the rhetoric around masculinity has been damaging to that strong spine aspect, where men go, okay, I don't want to get me too'd. I don't want to hurt women. They're so afraid to have a strong spine. I hear that all the time. How do I, even just something as simple as, I had a client ask me one time, how do I know, even if she says yes to consent, how do I really know that it's a yes, like a full yes, and she's not just saying it because I don't want to get me too'd. He was a lawyer. And so there's this visceral fear that's been sort of embedded through these conversations we've been having as a society. And so what ends up happening is we tell men, well, just open your heart, bro. You just, and they go, if they don't have that strong spine in place, it makes sense that they would be afraid to open their heart, because you're being vulnerable and open without any boundaries, and somebody could easily come in and use and manipulate you, and et cetera. And so there's a big part of this conversation for my particular listeners is like giving them permission to have that strong spine. Not that they need permission from us, but saying you having a strong spine is not the same.
Step one.
It's not aggressive. Women aren't going to associate it with aggression, right? We're going to associate it with being assertive and directive, and that's actually safe for us. There is a difference between that and being abusive and aggressive and unempathetic. having a strong spine, but a closed heart, right? So you really do need both in tandem, right? That's the piece that people aren't talking about, is like, be extra masculine, or, be a total softie so you don't hurt anybody. But we want both in order to strike an assertive, healthy middle ground. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. That's why I'm kind of in a place where I feel like throwing every male polarity coach like like over a ship or something. I don't know. I'm just picturing me going, boop, I'm so sick of you. The polarity coaching is kind of doing more danger than anything these days. It's definitely a balance. Absolutely a balance. I wanted to say that on behalf of myself and some other women I wanted to say that we need you. We absolutely need you. We 100% need you. So please don't ever think as a man in society that you're not needed, because not only are you wanted, but you are needed. And I know that with the feminine movement, there's this whole, I don't need a man, I can pay my bills and all that stuff. And I'll speak for myself. In order for me to be fully realized as a woman, I need a man. And I am an alpha type female. So for me to say that, it's really coming from such a place of truth. We need you to show up.
I want to add to that I think there are different types of needing. It's kind of like there's like a needing from trauma, right? A neediness from trauma. And then there's a neediness from a fully embodied, healthy woman who understands the role that a wonderful man can play in her life. And I think those are two different things.
Absolutely. Well, I think the final note that kind of speaks to one of the other notes that I had written to prepare for this is a woman with a healthy nervous system wants a nicer type guy. Right? Because essentially when we're in a relationship, we're managing each other's nervous system. If I'm creating a lot in the world, I have a big mission that hasn't even been fully fulfilled yet. I want a man who is stable and supportive. I've worked very hard on myself to have a balanced nervous system. If I'm dating someone and I have more than 2 mornings where I wake up with that slightly crazy feeling or confused, if I wake up with that little like, am I going crazy? And then you go and you read texts and it's like, no, he definitely said that. And then I'll check in with a friend, like, I'm not going crazy, am I? Right? Because I'm stable and healthy and I want the same. So as soon as someone is like throwing my nervous system off, I'm like, I don't care how good looking they are. I don't care how much money they make. I don't care if they're my freaking ordained soulmate from heaven. I will not have it in my life because I'm a healthy woman.
So it sounds like you're saying that the bad boy type would throw your nervous system off. So you want someone who has an open heart and who's available and who's attuned and who really cares. And we're just tweaking that and saying, keep that and add a backbone.
Well, so there's kind of something I've always joked around with my friends about. And again, this is my own thing. And I'm like, I want a nice guy with a 2% asshole factor, right? You got to be an asshole a little bit. I want that little bit of an edge. I want that witty banter. I'm even smiling as I'm talking about this, right? So there's something about, you got to be a little bit of an asshole. The 2% asshole factor is fun. To me, that's where the edge factor comes in. That's where the no comes in. No's are very attractive. They can be a big turn on when a guy says no. I think there can be a little bit of an unpredictability with that 2%. Obviously, I'm not saying 40% or 30%, right? There has to be something else there, that edge there. The bad boys, I mean, I was always a bad girl, so it was natural for me to go out with. I was never the good girl. So it just, being with a bad boy was just natural. It's like, oh yeah, I'll give that right back to you. It doesn't mean I didn't get hurt. And at this stage in my life, definitely no bad boys.
Why not?
I have just a bigger mission in the world, and I need to be loved and supported. And a bad boy, like, I'm full. I've had like bad boy main courses over and over. Like, I'm full. I love and respect myself so much. And I've experimented in every, gosh, like literally every way, like sexually. I've done everything I wanted to do. So bad boy between the sheets, heck yeah. Like, let's put in with that 2%. But I just don't have time or energy for a bad boy.
So like a gentleman in the streets, but a bad boy
Like
in
a
the
freak in
sheets.
the sheets. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that sounds like a good balance. I haven't had any other ED experts on the podcast. And so would you be willing to speak to your process for anyone that is experiencing ED? You have such a groundbreaking process, and your work itself is just groundbreaking. The fact that you have 100% success rate in helping men with ED, even men who are on Viagra, et cetera, and you do it naturally is just amazing. And so would you be willing to speak to that for any listeners who are struggling with that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for safety reasons, I'm saying 99% now because 100% is so scary. And I actually had to do a reframe. I used to say I help men heal erectile dysfunction. Now I say I teach men how to heal their erectile dysfunction. So, because really I'm guiding them, and then they're doing the actions themselves, right? So then that puts the responsibility on them. What do I want to tell you about erectile dysfunction? So there's several causes for it, and the first one is a dysregulated nervous system. It's when you're in a more sympathetic mode. The cycle for an erection is relax, excite, relax. So it's parasympathetic, sympathetic, and then parasympathetic, which is the ending. And also having a compromised circulatory system is a contributor. Having mental and emotional blocks is a big contributor. I've even seen cases where when a guy is experiencing depression, I know this is like a PG, I'm trying to think, his member can actually become cold. Like I think guys are surprised to find out that there's a connection between the heart and the member, and that's 100% the case. I mean, you can't just cut yourself in half. So your mental emotional aspect does affect down there. Pornography usage has a big impact, especially chronic usage over years. And, now we're seeing so many cases of guys in their 20s. And that is usually 100% of the time porn viewing. What else? The management of sexual energy. So for me, a good morning erection is a combination of a healthy balance of the things I just described. And then that energy shows up in the kidney chi. And when you have a good, healthy morning erection, it's your body saying, I've got energy to spend, and I've got energy to be firm. I'm functioning well. So the way that I work is we start by building up the morning erection, and then anything else we just can tweak after that. But so I work very differently than everyone else with this. And what else? Certain medications can be a contributor, like beta blockers is a big one. Beta blockers is my nemesis. For some reason, the medical establishment says that they don't play a role in ED, and they do. I mean, hands down, they do. Gosh, what else? I think those are the main causes right
Is
now.
is not having a solid morning wood or having a morning wood at all the start of ED? Is that filed
Yes.
under ED?
From my perspective, yes, absolutely. Yes. You can't, there's nothing there to build on. But here's the thing, guys tend to force things. So they could wake up with no morning erection. And I would say on some level, porn is forcing an erection. I would say that taking a pill is forcing erection. I would say that not being able to perform with your wife, but being able to perform by stepping out is forcing an erection. So they'll force it, but they'll not realize it's stemming from the lack of a morning erection.
Fascinating. One time you said that the masculine is associated with light, and to increase your light intake as part of this process. So you're saying there's lots of internal work that needs to be done, first of all, and then lots of bad habits that need to be cut out. And then
Yeah.
they can also add in these other daily habits that might be helpful.
Well, that's when you start to get more into the tantric aspect of things. So again, like just kind of a personal share, but I had a lover that I trained to withhold ejaculation, and we kept doing the tantric breath work, and I was really like building up his light quotient. And in tantra, that is known, the lingam is known as the wand of light. So we got to the point where we would be making love, he would have orgasmic release with no fluids coming out, but I would feel a rocket, like a rocket of light shoot up through my central channel and shoot up to the crown of my head and out. So that's like very advanced. That's when you're working with someone with ED, we definitely start with the basics, and then the more advanced work is creating the wand of light.
And something I think any man or human would benefit from is getting some sunlight, eating vegetables that, because they take in light. I think you said laughter, because laughter is levity, which is lightness.
Yeah, definitely. Just some light eye gazing for 10 minutes at sunup or sundown. Nothing that would hurt your eyes, but there's those times when you can like lightly gaze with the sun if you time it right. Getting 20 minutes of sunlight on your skin, as Ashley said, eating light foods, like foods where the sunlight is coming right down into them, like fruits, greens, veggies, like they're light filled, and light has information in it. And plant medicines are concentrated, like they're concentrated kind of boluses of light. So I would even put plant medicines on that list as well.
Love that. What you just said reminded me of, you said light carries information. Information is ideally the pinnacle of information is truth with a capital T. The masculine is truth. And that is there's an aspect of authenticity when a man speaks his truth or speaks to the truth or looks for the truth. And it reminds me, it makes me think of the feminine as being very fluid and feeling based and maybe not rooted in logic and truth and facts and all these things. And so it's a beautiful thing when a man can bring truth with a capital T to the dynamic. There's a stability to it. There's an authenticity to it. There's a presence to it. There's a groundedness to it, kind of like God is unwavering. That's the idea, right? That truth with a capital T, it's unwavering. It is what it is. And we can have all the feelings in the world about it. And those are perfectly normal, natural, healthy, and they're part of the creative process. They're important. And that's one reason we need men, right? They have the testosterone to essentially stabilize themselves and offer that light, offer that information, offer that truth, and stand strong in it, whatever that looks like. It could be spiritual in nature or not, right? The idea is that it's energetic. It's this energetic presence of I am, and there's an unwaveringness to it. I'd love for you to speak to that if it resonates at all. It's just kind of what came to mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like it's like as simple as Father Sky, Mother Earth. Like, to me, mother is matter. It is what is solid is the feminine. What is not solid to me is the masculine. So breath, right? The secret to life is right under your nose. It's your breath. So for me, I actually ground in the breath, because the breath is the only thing that exists in the present moment that is unchanging. My body will change. It will continue to age. The ground beneath me, my location will change. But anchoring in the breath in the present moment is unchanging. So I think of that as the masculine.
And that reminds me so much of that strong spine that you talk about. I'm anchored. I'm present. I'm here. I'm immovable or unmovable, no matter what Mother Nature is doing and what shifts, are in, you know what I mean? Like this, how the matter is shifting around me, or my woman is shifting. I'm solid.
The back of the body is the masculine, the front of the body is the feminine. So right there, it's like strong backbone, right? It's like I know not everyone had a father, or their fathers, their time was cut short. So as an example, people that didn't have that, it is said that your father is the one that puts his hand on your shoulder or your back and says, go out into the world, right? So your father is the one who's like pushing you forward. Your mother is, and let's say your father pushes you out into the world, and then maybe you get a little beat up, or you come home, and what does your mother do? Your mother, if you had one, gives you a big hug. She embraces you into the front of the body, the feminine. So the world really is just constantly made up of masculine, feminine elements. Of course, we need each other. We can't exist. We already are that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up? That was really profound, and I think a wonderful note to start to wrap up on.
I love wrapping up on profound. I'm good with that.
Okay, perfect. Where can people find you?
They can find me. I always advise people just go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, because with the topics I talk about, sometimes I get blocked and stuff on social media. And so the website is www.shari, SHARI James.com. And just, send me through my contact or sign up for the newsletter, and then I can get you. Actually, it's a lot of things I'm not talking about publicly on there. And there's going to be a really cool offer coming up that's not public yet as well. More towards the Wand of Light stuff.
Wonderful. When is that offer going to be out?
I believe in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Good to know. Is that going to be an evergreen offer or kind of a one-off thing?
I mean, I can say what it is. It's the first time I've been saying it publicly. So what it is, it's called the Take Control Training, and it's about lasting longer in the bedroom, basically lasting as long as you want to, but also creating 3 different types of orgasms. So the intense, the full body, and the non-ejaculatory. And so it's showing you that you have the power to create these experiences and to find out what your body is capable of.
And then they can do exactly what you said earlier in the podcast, which is,
directive.
Yeah. And in the bedroom, just really take charge and not have any anxiety, no worries. They're in full control over their own body and of the situation, which is really hot.
It's a massive confidence booster. Massive, this particular area.
Love that. Thank you for being on the podcast. It was wonderful having you today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of A Podcast for Nice Guys. For more nice guy tips, follow Ashley at Nice Guy Reform School on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. See you next time on A Podcast for Nice Guys.